The door slammed in Zainab's face at 11:47 p.m., and the lock clicked with a finality that matched the death of her marriage. She stood on the marble steps of the Lagos mansion she'd called home for 6 years, her 7 months pregnant belly pressed against the ornate door, her fist pounding desperately against the wood. Snow, a rare occurrence in Lagos that had shocked the entire city, fell heavily around her, already coating her hijab and the thin nightgown that was her only protection against the freezing night. Welcome to Stories by Ajibs. If you love stories of karma, revenge, and justice, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our explosive tailies. Now, let's dive into today's story. Rashid, please. Zainab's voice cracked as she hammered on the door. It's freezing, I'm pregnant, please let me back in. Through the frosted window beside the door, she could see her husband, Rashid Bello, billionaire tech mogul, and the man she'd loved since university, standing with his arms crossed, his face carved from ice colder than the weather. Beside him stood Kemi Adelek, draped in a silk robe that cost more than most people's monthly salary, her perfectly manicured hand possessively wrapped around Rashid's arm. You sign the papers, Rashid's muffled voice came through the door. That makes you a trespasser now. Leave my property before I call security. Our baby, Zainab screamed, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Rashid, I'm carrying your child. How can you do this? Kemi's laugh was audible even through the heavy door. That mistake isn't his problem anymore. You should have thought about that baby before you became so useless to him. Zainab's legs trembled, from cold, from shock, from the betrayal that was crushing her chest like a physical weight. 2 hours ago, she'd been inside that warm house, sitting at the dining table, when Rashid had thrown divorce papers at her with the same casual indifference he'd show to discarding trash. Sign them, he'd demanded. I'm done with this marriage, done with you. Rashid, what are you talking about? Zainab had stared at the papers in confusion. We're having a baby, we're building our family, what's wrong? What's wrong? Rashid had laughed bitterly. Everything about you is wrong, Zainab. You're boring, traditional, always covering yourself, always praying, always talking about modesty and values. You're suffocating me. Kemi had walked in then, wearing familiarity with Rashid's home like a second skin. He needs a real woman, Zainab, someone modern, someone who understands his world, not some village girl playing dress-up in expensive clothes. The insult had stung because it was designed to. Zainab had grown up in a modest family in Kano. She'd met Rashid at university, where his charm and apparent devotion to his faith had made her believe they wanted the same things. They'd married young, and she'd supported him through the early struggles of building his tech company, Bello Tech Solutions. She'd worked as his accountant, managing the books while he networked and pitched to investors. She'd gone without so he could attend conferences. She'd believed in him when everyone else called him crazy for thinking a Nigerian tech startup could compete globally. And when Bello Tech had finally exploded into success 3 years ago, making Rashid one of Nigeria's youngest billionaires, Zainab had been genuinely happy for him. For them. She'd been a fool. I'm not signing, Zainab had said firmly, pushing the papers back. We made vows, Rashid, before Allah, before our families. I'm not breaking them just because you've lost your way. Rashid's eyes had turned dangerous. Then I'll make your life so miserable you'll beg to sign. He'd grabbed her arm, dragged her to the door, and shoved the papers at her again. Sign, now. Zainab had seen Kemi smirking in the background, clearly enjoying the show. And something in her had snapped. Not surrender, rage. Fine, Zainab had said coldly. I'll sign. But know this, Rashid, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. She'd signed every page, her hand shaking not from fear but from fury. The moment the last signature was complete, Rashid had snatched the papers and literally pushed her out the front door. Your clothes, your belongings, I'll have them sent somewhere, he'd said. But you're never setting foot in my house again. The door had slammed, the lock had clicked. And now Zainab stood in freezing snow, 7 months pregnant, with nothing but her nightgown and hijab. Her phone was inside. Her purse was inside. Her shoes were inside. Everything she owned was inside that house with a man who'd just thrown her away like garbage. The cold bit through her thin clothing, and Zainab's teeth began to chatter. She needed to move, to find shelter, but where? Her family was in Kano, hours away. Her friends, most of them had drifted away over the years, as Rashid had subtly isolated her from anyone who wasn't useful to his business. She looked down at her swollen belly, placing protective hands over her unborn daughter. Yes, daughter. She'd found out just last week. A baby girl who would never know her father's love because he'd chosen a mistress over his own child. I'm sorry, baby, Zainab whispered through frozen lips. Your father is a monster, but I promise you I'll protect you. I'll give you everything. And one day he'll regret this, I swear it. The front gate of the mansion compound was locked too, requiring a code Rashid had probably already changed. But Zainab found a service entrance near the back that security had left unlatched. She stumbled through it onto the street beyond. Lagos looked alien under snow. The city that normally never slept was eerily quiet, most people sheltering from the unprecedented weather. Cars were abandoned on roadsides. Streetlights illuminated falling snow that already lay several inches deep. Zainab's bare feet screamed in pain as she walked, leaving bloody footprints in the pristine white. She needed to find help. A mosque, a hospital, anywhere warm. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, Zainab collapsed against the wall of a closed shop, her body shaking violently from hypothermia. Her vision blurred. Her baby kicked weakly, as if protesting the cold. Please, Zainab prayed through frozen tears. Please, Allah, protect my baby. Don't let her die because of his cruelty. Headlights appeared through the snow. A car, an old Toyota that had seen better days, pulled up beside her. The door opened, and a middle-aged woman in a thick coat rushed out. Ya Allah, sister, what are you doing out here? The woman wrapped her own coat around Zainab. You're pregnant, you'll freeze to death. My husband, Zainab managed through chattering teeth. He locked me out, please. Help my baby. Get in the car, now. The woman helped Zainab into the warm interior, where two children sat in the back seat, eyes wide with concern. Mama, is the auntie okay? The little girl asked. She will be, Amina, she will be. The woman cranked up the heat and began driving. I'm Hadiza. I'm taking you to my house. It's small, but it's warm. You can stay as long as you need. As warmth slowly returned to Zainab's frozen body, she turned to look back at the mansion district disappearing behind them. Somewhere in one of those huge houses, Rashid was probably in bed with Kemi, celebrating his freedom, not giving a single thought to the wife and child he'd discarded. But Zainab was done being the victim. Rashid thought he'd won because he had money and power. He thought Zainab was nothing without him, just a simple girl from Kano with no connections, no resources, no way to fight back. He was wrong. What Rashid didn't know, what nobody except Zainab's lawyer knew, was that for the past 3 years, Zainab had been documenting everything. Every suspicious transaction in Bellotech's accounts. Every bribe Rashid had paid to government officials. Every tax he'd evaded. Every regulation he'd violated. She'd been a loyal wife, yes, but she'd also been a trained accountant who knew exactly where all the bodies were buried. She had evidence that could destroy not just Rashid's company, but his freedom. Evidence she'd compiled and secured the moment she'd noticed his affairs beginning, knowing that the man she'd married was becoming someone capable of terrible things. And now that he'd shown her his true nature, now that he'd proven himself willing to throw his pregnant wife into freezing snow, Zainab no longer felt any obligation to protect him. Thank you for helping me, Zainab said to Hadiza, her voice steadier now despite her still shaking body. You saved my life, my baby's life. It's what any decent person would do, Hadiza replied. What kind of man throws his pregnant wife out into snow? The kind who's about to learn a very expensive lesson. Zainab said quietly, her hand resting protectively on her belly. Inside her nightgown pocket, she'd managed to grab one thing before Rashid had shoved her out. a small USB drive containing copies of every piece of incriminating evidence she'd ever compiled. Rashid wanted a divorce. He'd get one. But he'd also get justice, the kind that would strip away everything he'd built on lies and corruption. The kind that would leave him as cold and helpless as he'd left her tonight. Revenge, Zainab was learning, was best served frozen. Rashid just made the worst mistake of his life, but he has no idea what's coming for him. What do you think Zainab should do with that evidence? Drop your predictions in the comments. If you're already hooked on this revenge story, smash that like button and subscribe to Stories by Ajibs. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. This is about to get intense. Share this with anyone who loves a good revenge story. 3 days after being locked out in the snow, Zainab sat in Hadiz's modest living room, wrapped in borrowed clothes, her fingers wrapped around a cup of hot tea. The frostbite on her feet was healing slowly, bandaged and elevated. Her baby was fine, a miracle the doctor at the free clinic had called it, considering what she'd endured. But Zainab wasn't thinking about miracles. She was thinking about strategy. "You need to report him to the police," Hadiza insisted, sitting across from her. "What he did was attempted murder. You could have died. Your baby could have died." "The police won't help," Zainab said quietly. "Rashid has half the force on his payroll. I've seen the payments myself in the company accounts. If I go to them, he'll know I'm coming for him, and he'll have time to cover his tracks." She pulled out the USB drive she'd protected so carefully. "But this is different. This can't be buried or bribed away." Hadiza looked at the small device. "What's on it?" 3 years of financial crimes. Proof that Rashid has been stealing from Bellotech's investors, evading taxes, bribing government officials for contracts he never properly fulfilled, and laundering money through fake subsidiaries. Zainab's voice was clinical, detached. "I documented everything because I knew someday I might need it. I just didn't think it would be like this." "You were protecting yourself," Hadiza said gently. "I was protecting a marriage I thought was worth saving," Zainab corrected. "I thought if I had evidence, I could confront him privately, make him change. I never wanted to destroy him. I just wanted him to be better." Her hand went to her belly. "But he destroyed us first. He threw us away. Now I'll use what I know to make sure he faces consequences." "What's your plan?" Zainab opened her borrowed laptop, Hadiz's daughter's school computer. "First, I need to contact my lawyer. Then I need to reach out to someone who can't be bought." She began typing, accessing an encrypted email account Rashid had never known existed. Her first message went to Barrister Akhafer, the lawyer who'd quietly helped her prepare for this exact scenario 3 years ago. "Barrister, it's time. He divorced me and left me to freeze in the snow while 7 months pregnant. I'm ready to move forward with everything we discussed. Please confirm receipt and advise next steps." The second email went to someone even more important. Ibrahim Musa, Nigeria's most respected investigative journalist, known for exposing corruption at the highest levels. He was famously incorruptible. Several politicians had tried and failed to buy his silence. "Mr. Musa, my name is Zainab Bello. I have evidence of extensive financial crimes committed by Rashid Bello of Bellotech Solutions. Tax evasion, investor fraud, bribery, money laundering. I'm willing to provide full documentation and testimony. Are you interested?" She hit send and sat back, her heart pounding. "Now what?" Hadiza asked. "Now we wait," Zainab said. "But not for long. People like Ibrahim Musa don't ignore stories this big." She was right. Within 2 hours, her encrypted email pinged with a response from the journalist. "Mrs. Bello, I'm very interested. Can we meet somewhere private? I need to verify your claims, but if what you're saying is true, this could be one of the biggest corruption cases in Nigerian tech history. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. at the address below. Come alone." Zainab smiled for the first time in days. He responded. Meanwhile, across the city in his penthouse suite, Rashid Bello was celebrating. The divorce was final. His lawyers had rushed it through with the kind of speed money could buy. Kemi lay beside him in his king-sized bed, her head on his chest, her expensive perfume filling his nostrils. I can't believe she actually left without a fight, Kemi purred. I thought she'd beg and cry for weeks. She knows when she's beaten, Rashid said dismissively. Zainab was always practical. She signed the papers, she left quietly. Good riddance. What about the baby? Rashid's jaw tightened. Not my problem. She can raise it on her own. I offered her a settlement, 50,000 naira. She didn't take it, so that's on her. 50,000 naira. Less than the cost of the watch on his wrist. Less than he spent on a single dinner at his favorite restaurant. Kemi laughed. You're so generous, baby. Most men would have given nothing. I'm not most men, Rashid agreed. Now, let's talk about our wedding. I'm thinking next month, something big. I want everyone to see that I've upgraded. Kemi kissed him deeply. I love the way you think. What neither of them knew was that, at that very moment, Barrister Akhafer was reviewing the evidence Zainab had sent him, his eyes growing wider with each document. This is explosive, he muttered to himself. Rashid Bello has been running Bellotech like his personal piggy bank. These investors have no idea their money is being siphoned into his private accounts. He immediately began making calls to regulatory agencies, carefully selecting contacts he knew couldn't be bought. The Corporate Affairs Commission, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission's untouchable unit, the Tax Authority's Special Investigations Team. I have a case that requires immediate attention, he told each one. Evidence of massive fraud at one of Nigeria's most prominent tech companies. I'm submitting formal complaints tomorrow, but I wanted to give you advance notice. The wheels of justice began to turn. The next day, Zainab met Ibrahim Musa at a quiet cafe in a part of Lagos Rashid would never visit. The journalist was a lean man in his 50s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Bello, he greeted her, his gaze taking in her bandaged feet, her borrowed clothes, her pregnant belly. You look like you've been through hell. I have, Zainab said simply. She sat down carefully, her feet still painful. 3 days ago, my husband divorced me and literally threw me out of his house into freezing snow. I nearly died. My baby nearly died, because I wasn't modern enough for him anymore. Ibrahim's expression darkened. I heard about that freak snowstorm. It was all over the news, but I didn't hear about this. Because men like Rashid Bello are very good at controlling narratives, Zainab said. She pulled out the USB drive. But they're not so good at hiding their crimes from the people who manage their books. She handed him the drive. Everything is on here. 3 years of documentation. Financial statements showing how he's been stealing from his own investors. Tax returns that are completely fraudulent. Communications proving he bribed officials for government contracts. Bank records showing money laundering through shell companies. Ibrahim plugged the drive into his laptop and began reviewing. Zainab watched his face as he clicked through folder after folder, file after file. His expression went from interested to shocked to absolutely riveted. My God, he breathed. This is, Mrs. Bello, do you understand what you have here? This isn't just corporate fraud. This is criminal conspiracy at the highest levels. Government ministers are implicated, banking executives, this goes deep. I know, Zainab said calmly. I'm the one who documented it all. Why? Ibrahim looked at her intently. Why compile all this evidence if you weren't planning to use it? I thought about using it to save him, Zainab admitted. I thought if I confronted him with proof of what he was becoming, he'd stop. He'd choose integrity over greed, choose our marriage over his mistress, choose our daughter over his ego. Her voice hardened. I was wrong, he chose cruelty instead, so now I choose justice. Ibrahim leaned back, studying her. You understand what will happen when I publish this. Rashid won't just lose his company. He'll likely go to prison. His assets will be seized. His reputation will be destroyed forever. Good, Zainab said without hesitation. He deserves all of that and more. He built his empire on lies and corruption. He hurt people, investors who trusted him, employees he cheated, government programs he defrauded. And he threw his pregnant wife into the snow to die. I want the world to know exactly who Rashid Bello really is. What about you? Ibrahim asked. He'll know you're the source. He'll come after you. Let him try, Zainab replied, her hand protectively on her belly. I have nothing left to lose. He already took everything, my marriage, my home, my dignity. But he can't take my truth, and he can't escape his consequences. Ibrahim nodded slowly. I'll need time to verify everything independently. Cross-reference the documents, interview sources, build an airtight case. But Mrs. Bello, I promise you, this story will run. And when it does, Rashid Bello's world is going to collapse. How long? Zainab asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. I need to be thorough. Cases like this get challenged in court, and I need to make sure every fact is bulletproof. I can wait, Zainab said. I've waited 3 years already. A few more weeks won't matter. They shook hands, and Zainab left the cafe feeling lighter than she had in days. The machinery of justice was in motion. Soon, very soon, Rashid would understand what it felt like to lose everything. That evening, back at Hadiz's house, Zainab's phone rang. A new phone Hadiza had helped her buy. The number was Rashid's. Her hand hovered over the decline button, but curiosity made her answer. What do you want, Rashid? Zainab. His voice was smooth, unconcerned. I'm calling about the settlement. 50,000 was my initial offer, but I've reconsidered. I'll give you 200,000. One-time payment. You take it, you disappear, you never contact me again. The baby isn't my responsibility, but I'm willing to be generous. 200,000 naira. Still an insult. Still pocket change to a billionaire. No, Zainab said simply. No, Rashid sounded surprised. Zainab, be reasonable. You're homeless, pregnant, with no income. 200,000 could. I don't want your money, Rashid, Zainab interrupted. I don't want anything from you except what you deserve. And what's that? You'll find out soon enough, Zainab said. Enjoy your time with Kemi. Enjoy your penthouse and your cars and your fake empire, because all of it is about to come crashing down. She hung up before he could respond. Across the city, Rashid stared at his phone, a flicker of unease crossing his features for the first time. What did she say? Kemi asked lazily from the couch. Nothing important, Rashid replied, but something in Zainab's voice had unsettled him. She'd sounded confident, certain. He shook it off. What could Zainab possibly do to him? She was nobody, she had nothing. He was Rashid Bello, billionaire untouchable. Or so he thought. 2 weeks later, Rashid Bello woke up to his world ending. His phone was exploding with notifications, hundreds of them, coming in faster than he could read. Text messages, emails, missed calls from his board members, investors, business partners, even family members he hadn't spoken to in years. What the hell? Rashid muttered, squinting at the screen. It was 6:47 a.m. Beside him, Kemi stirred but didn't wake. The first message he opened was from his company's head of communications, marked urgent in all caps. Sir, we have a crisis. Major news story breaking. Call me immediately. Rashid's stomach tightened. He opened his news app and his blood turned to ice. The top headline, from Nigeria's most respected investigative news outlet, screamed across his screen. BELLOTCH Billionaire RASHID BELLO. Empire built on fraud, bribery, and corruption exclusive investigation. Below it was Ibrahim Musa's byline, and beneath that, a photo of Rashid at a recent tech conference, looking polished and successful. The irony wasn't lost on him. With shaking hands, Rashid clicked the article. For 3 years, Rashid Bello has presented himself as one of Nigeria's brightest tech entrepreneurs, a self-made billionaire who built Bello Tech Solutions from nothing into a company worth billions. But an extensive investigation reveals a darker truth. Bello's empire was constructed on systematic fraud, investor deception, tax evasion, and bribery of government officials. Documents obtained by this reporter show that Bello has been siphoning millions of naira from investor funds into personal offshore accounts. He has evaded over 200 million naira in corporate taxes through fraudulent reporting. He has paid bribes totaling 50 million naira to government officials to secure contracts that his company was not qualified to fulfill. Most damning, internal communications reveal Bello knew his company's flagship product, the Bello Secure encryption software marketed to government agencies, had critical security flaws. Rather than fix them, he bribed officials to overlook these deficiencies, potentially compromising national security. This investigation is based on hundreds of documents, including bank statements, internal emails, financial records, and witness testimony. All evidence has been verified and cross-referenced. The article went on for thousands of words, methodically dismantling every aspect of Rashid's business. Every lie, every bribe, every fraudulent transaction, all laid bare with documentary proof. And at the bottom of the article, a note that made Rashid's blood boil. This investigation was made possible by a confidential source with intimate knowledge of Bellotech's operations. The source provided extensive documentation and has requested anonymity for safety reasons. Rashid knew exactly who that source was. "Zanab," he roared, his voice waking Kemi instantly. What's wrong?" Kemi sat up, confused and alarmed. Rashid thrust his phone at her. That witch, that ungrateful, vindictive witch, she gave them everything. Kemi read the article, her face going pale. "Oh my God, Rashid, this is bad. This is really bad." "Bad," Rashid laughed bitterly. "This is the end. She destroyed me, she." His phone rang. His lawyer, Barrister Ademi. "Don't speak," the lawyer said the moment Rashid answered. "Just listen. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has issued a warrant for your arrest. So has the Tax Authority. The Corporate Affairs Commission has frozen all Bellotech assets pending investigation. Your bank accounts are being seized as we speak." Rashid felt the room spin. "They can't do that. I have rights, You have receipts proving you bribed 3 government ministers, Rashid." Barrister Ademi cut him off. "You have bank records showing you stole from your own investors. You have emails where you knowingly sold faulty security software to the government. What rights do you think you have?" "Fix this," Rashid demanded. "That's what I pay you for." "I can't fix this," the lawyer replied bluntly. "No one can. The evidence is overwhelming and public. Every media outlet in Nigeria is running the story. Social media is on fire. Your investors are already filing lawsuits. The government is scrambling to distance themselves from you. Rashid, you need to turn yourself in before they come for you." "Turn myself in? I'm not going to prison." "Then you'll be arrested and it will look worse. At least if you surrender, we can negotiate bail. Maybe." The lawyer paused. "And Rashid, I'm withdrawing as your counsel. I can't represent you in a case this toxic. You need a criminal defense specialist, and even then I don't like your chances." The line went dead. Rashid stood frozen, his mind unable to process the speed at which everything was collapsing. Hours ago, he'd been a respected billionaire. Now he was a criminal, his face plastered across every news outlet as a symbol of corruption and greed. "We need to leave," Kemi said suddenly, already grabbing clothes from the closet. "We need to get out of Nigeria before they arrest you. We can go to." "We," Rashid turned to look at her. "There's no we, Kemi, this is my problem. I'm your fiancé. We're supposed to get married next month." Rashid laughed harshly. "You think I'm marrying you now, when I'm about to lose everything, when I'll probably go to prison? Kemi, you were fun when I was rich, but I don't need a wife in prison. I need a miracle." Kemi's face hardened. "You're throwing me away, after everything." "Like I threw Zainab away," Rashid said bitterly. "Turns out karma works fast. Now get out, I need to think." "You're disgusting," Kemi spat. She grabbed her designer purse and stormed toward the door. "You deserve everything that's happening to you. Zainab was too good for you. I hope they lock you up and throw away the key." She slammed the door behind her, and Rashid was alone. His phone kept buzzing. News outlets requesting comment. Former friends and business partners distancing themselves publicly. His mother calling, crying, asking how he could have brought such shame on their family. He ignored them all and did the only thing he could think of. He called Zainab. She answered on the third ring. "Hello, Rashid." Her voice was calm, too calm. It infuriated him. "You destroyed me," Rashid hissed. "You vindictive, evil woman, you went to the press. You gave them everything. You ruined my life." "No," Zainab replied quietly. "You ruined your own life. I just made sure everyone knew the truth about who you really are. I gave you everything. I married you when you were nobody. I made you somebody." "You married me when I was an honest person," Zainab corrected. "And I stayed honest while you became a criminal. I kept your books, Rashid. I saw every illegal transaction, every bribe, every lie. I begged you to stop. I warned you that it would catch up with you. You ignored me." "I loved you," Rashid shouted. "You never loved me," Zainab said, her voice breaking slightly for the first time. "You loved what I could do for you. The moment I stopped being useful, the moment I represented morality and conscience instead of blind support, you threw me away. You threw me into freezing snow to die while carrying your child. You chose your mistress and your corruption over your family. So this is revenge. You're destroying me because I hurt your feelings." "I'm destroying you because you're a criminal," Zainab replied firmly. "You stole from people who trusted you. You compromised national security for profit. You corrupted government officials. You didn't just hurt me, Rashid. You hurt thousands of people, and someone needed to stop you." "The baby," Rashid said desperately, changing tactics. "Zainab, think about our daughter. She needs a father if I go to prison." "Our daughter will be better off never knowing you than growing up thinking your behavior is acceptable," Zainab interrupted. "I will raise her to be honest, kind, and principled, everything you're not. She'll know her father was a criminal who faced justice for his crimes, and she'll learn from that lesson." "Zainab, please," Rashid's voice cracked. "I'm begging you, call them off. Tell them you made it up. I'll give you anything. Money, the house, whatever you want, just stop this." "It's too late," Zainab said. "The evidence is public. The investigations are official. Even if I wanted to stop it, which I don't, I couldn't. You did this to yourself, Rashid. Every choice, every crime, every moment of greed and cruelty led here. This is consequences." "I hate you," Rashid whispered. "I know," Zainab replied. "But I don't hate you anymore. I pity you. You had everything, a wife who loved you, a child on the way, a business that could have been legitimate and successful. But you chose shortcuts and corruption. You chose ego over integrity. You chose Kemi over your family, and now you have nothing." She paused. "Actually, that's not true. You have what you deserve. Goodbye, Rashid. I hope prison teaches you the humility life couldn't." She hung up. Rashid stood in his penthouse, the penthouse that would be seized within hours, and for the first time in his adult life, he felt genuine fear. Outside his window, he could see news vans pulling up to his building, reporters setting up cameras, a crowd beginning to gather. His phone buzzed with a new notification. The EFCC had issued a public statement confirming an arrest warrant for Rashid Bello on multiple counts of fraud, corruption, and money laundering. It was over. Everything he'd built, everything he'd schemed and lied and cheated for, gone. Destroyed by the woman he'd thrown away, using the very records he'd trusted her to keep. Rashid sank to the floor of his luxury penthouse and finally understood. Zainab had never been weak. She'd been patient, strategic, waiting for the right moment to strike. And she'd struck perfectly. The knock on his door came 30 minutes later. "Mr. Bello, this is the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. We have a warrant for your arrest. Open the door." Rashid looked around his penthouse one last time, at the expensive furniture, the designer everything, the symbols of wealth he'd valued more than integrity. Then he opened the door and held out his wrists for the handcuffs. Across the city, in Hadiz's modest home, Zainab watched the news coverage of Rashid's arrest on the small television. Her hand rested on her pregnant belly, and for the first time since that terrible night in the snow, she felt something close to peace. "Is it wrong that I'm not sad?" she asked Hadiza, who sat beside her. "After what he did to you, to all those people he defrauded," Hadiza shook her head. No, sister, this is justice. He earned every bit of what's happening to him. Zainab nodded slowly. The baby kicked strongly and she smiled. Your father is going to prison, little one, but you and we're going to be fine, better than fine. Because what Rashid still didn't know, what would be revealed very soon, was that Zainab wasn't as helpless as he'd assumed. She'd been more than just Bellotech's accountant. She'd been a brilliant financial strategist who'd made connections throughout Nigeria's business world. And those connections were about to pay off in ways Rashid couldn't imagine. His fall was only the beginning. Her rise was just starting. RASHIDGOTARRSDED. Everything is crumbling. But wait, what does Zainab mean about her rise just starting? What else does she have planned? Drop your theories in the comments. If you're loving this revenge story, smash that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to Stories by Ajibs with notifications on. 2 more chapters to go and this story gets even more satisfying. Share this with everyone who loves justice. 6 weeks after Rashid's arrest, Zainab sat in a sleek conference room in Victoria Island, surrounded by some of Nigeria's most powerful business executives. Her pregnancy was now at 9 months, her belly prominent beneath the elegant maternity business suit she wore. But her mind was razor-sharp, and every person in that room knew it. Mrs. Bello, began Mr. Okonkwo, CEO of Tech Venture Capital, one of West Africa's largest investment firms. Or should I say, Ms. Hassan, I understand you've legally reverted to your maiden name. Zainab Hassan is fine, she replied calmly. I want nothing connecting me to Rashid Bello except our daughter, who will also carry my family name. Understandable, Mr. Okonkwo nodded. Now, let's discuss why we're all here. You've presented us with a remarkable business proposal. You want to acquire Bellotech's assets, which are currently being liquidated to pay back defrauded investors and restructure the company under new management. Your management. That's correct, Zainab confirmed. Bellotech had genuine value beneath Rashid's corruption. The core technology is sound. The employees are talented. The client relationships, the legitimate ones, are worth preserving. What the company needs is honest leadership and transparent operations. And you believe you can provide that? Asked Mrs. Adami, representing a consortium of institutional investors. I know I can, Zainab said firmly. I managed Bellotech's finances for 3 years before Rashid's success went to his head. I know every aspect of the business. I know which projects were legitimate and which were fraudulent. I know which employees were complicit in his schemes and which were innocent. Most importantly, I know how to rebuild trust. She pulled out a detailed presentation. I've spent the past 6 weeks developing a complete restructuring plan. It includes compensating defrauded investors, cooperating fully with authorities, implementing transparent accounting systems, and rebuilding the company's reputation through demonstrable integrity. Mr. Okonkwo studied the documents, his eyebrows rising. This is comprehensive. You've thought of everything. I've had 3 years to think about it, Zainab replied. While Rashid was busy being a criminal, I was planning what the company could become if it operated ethically. This proposal represents that vision. The optics are interesting, Mrs. Adami mused. The whistleblower who brought down a corrupt billionaire now stepping in to save his company and make his victims whole. The media would love that narrative. I'm not doing this for media attention, Zainab said. I'm doing it because Bellotech employed 300 people who lost their jobs when the company collapsed. Because investors lost their retirement savings trusting Rashid's lies. Because this company could actually do good in the world if someone honest runs it. And yes, because I want to prove that I was never the nobody Rashid claimed I was. The room was silent for a moment. What do you need from us? Mr. Okonkwo finally asked. Capital, Zainab replied. I have some personal savings and a settlement from the divorce that's being processed. But to acquire the company's assets and fund the restructuring, I need investment partners. Partners who believe in ethical business practices and long-term value over quick profits. She looked each person in the eye. I'm offering you the chance to be part of something rare in Nigerian business, a company built on integrity from the ground up. A company that proves you don't have to be corrupt to succeed. A company that makes profit and does right by people. Mr. Okonkwo exchanged glances with the other investors. Then he smiled. Ms. Hassan, I think I speak for everyone here when I say, we're in. Let's rebuild Bellotech the right way. The contracts were signed that afternoon. Within a week, Zainab Hassan became the majority owner and CEO of what was now renamed Hassan Technology Solutions. The news coverage was explosive, but this time in her favor. WHISTLEBLOWERZAINAB. HASSAN rises from husband's ASHES to rebuild tech empire. Read one headline. From victim to victor. How RASHID Bellows' ex-wife turned betrayal into business triumph, declared another. The stories detailed everything. How Rashid had thrown her out into the snow while pregnant, how she'd survived and gathered the courage to expose his crimes, and now how she was stepping in to repair the damage he'd caused. Public opinion swung massively in Zainab's favor. On social media, people celebrated her resilience and business acumen. Women's groups hailed her as an inspiration. Business schools requested interviews to study her turnaround strategy. And in a prison cell in Kirikiri maximum security, Rashid Bello watched the news coverage with growing horror and rage. Turn it off, he told his cellmate, a man serving time for robbery who'd become oddly friendly with the fallen billionaire. Why, this your wife, nah? She fine and smart too. She really scatter you proper. The cellmate laughed. You throw away gold to chase brass, see your life now. Rashid closed his eyes, but he couldn't escape the reality. His trial was ongoing, and it wasn't going well. The evidence Zainab had provided was ironclad. His expensive lawyers had tried every trick, but there was no defending against his own documented crimes. The prosecution was seeking 20 years. 20 years in prison while Zainab, his supposedly useless wife, took over his company and became celebrated as a business hero. His mother visited him that day, her face aged by shame and disappointment. Rashid, what were you thinking? She asked through the glass partition. Zainab was a good girl, she loved you, she supported you, and you threw her away like she was nothing. She destroyed me, Mama, Rashid said bitterly. She took everything. She exposed your crimes, his mother corrected sharply. There's a difference. You stole from people, Rashid. You lied and cheated and hurt innocent people. What did you think would happen? I thought I was smart enough not to get caught. You were never as smart as you thought, his mother said sadly. And definitely not as smart as Zainab. She saw who you were becoming, documented everything, and waited. While you were chasing that Kemi girl and throwing your wife into the snow, Zainab was building a case that would destroy you and then a business plan to rebuild what you broke. She stood to leave. I'm ashamed of you. Your father would be ashamed. You had everything, a good wife, a child coming, a successful business. But you wanted more and you didn't care who you hurt to get it. Now you have nothing and she has everything. That's not destruction, Rashid. That's justice. After she left, Rashid sat alone with his thoughts. For the first time since his arrest, he allowed himself to really think about Zainab, not as the enemy who'd brought him down, but as the woman he'd married. He remembered their early days, how she'd believed in him when his business was just an idea, how she'd worked alongside him, often late into the night, managing accounts while he pitched to investors, how she'd celebrated his first major contract like it was her own success, how she'd always been honest with him, even when the truth was uncomfortable. When had he stopped listening to her? When had he started seeing her traditional values as weakness instead of strength? When had he convinced himself that Kemi's modern superficiality was more valuable than Zainab's deep integrity? The answer was painful, the moment he'd gotten rich enough to think rules didn't apply to him. Meanwhile, Zainab was experiencing a very different kind of reflection. She sat in her new office, modest but professional, nothing like Rashid's ostentatious penthouse suite, reviewing employee files for Hassan Technologies. Ms. Hassan, her new assistant, a young woman named Blessing, knocked on the door. The former Bellotech employees are here for the meeting you called. Zainab stood carefully, her 9 months pregnant body making every movement deliberate. Send them in. 50 employees filed into the conference room, their faces showing a mixture of hope and anxiety. These were the people who'd lost their jobs when Bellotech collapsed. Programmers, engineers, support staff who'd had nothing to do with Rashid's crimes but had suffered anyway. Thank you all for coming, Zainab began. I know the past 2 months have been difficult. You lost your jobs through no fault of your own. Some of you are struggling to pay rent, to feed your families, to explain to your children why everything changed so suddenly. She saw heads nodding, saw the pain her words reflected. I called you here to offer you your jobs back, Zainab continued. Hassan Technologies is hearing. We're rebuilding this company on a foundation of integrity and transparency. We need talented people who believe in doing things the right way. People who were victims of Rashid's crimes, not participants. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs of disbelief. The salaries will be fair, better than what Rashid paid, actually, because I believe in compensating people properly. The work environment will be respectful. The accounting will be transparent. And if anyone ever asks you to do something unethical, you'll have my direct line to report it, no questions asked. A programmer named Chitty raised his hand. Ms. Hassan, why are you doing this? You could hire new people, start fresh. Why bring back employees from a company that caused you so much pain? Because you weren't the company, Zainab replied. Rashid was. He built a culture of corruption from the top. But most of you were just doing honest work, trying to support your families. You don't deserve to be punished for his crimes. You deserve a second chance to work for a company you can be proud of. Another employee, a woman named Funmi, spoke up tearfully. I heard what Mr. Rashid did to you, throwing you out in the snow while pregnant. How can you even bear to look at anything connected to him? Zainab's hand went to her belly. Because this company was built on your hard work as much as his corruption. The good parts, the actual technology, the real innovations, came from people like you. I'm not preserving Rashid's legacy. I'm preserving yours. The room fell silent, then someone started clapping. Soon everyone joined in, and Zainab felt tears threatening for the first time in weeks. After the meeting, as employees lined up to sign new employment contracts, Blessing approached Zainab. Ma, you have a visitor. She says it's urgent. Zainab looked up to see Kemi Adelek standing in the doorway, looking nothing like the confident mistress who'd stood in Rashid's mansion weeks ago. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple dress. Her makeup was minimal. She looked, Zainab thought, almost human. Kemi, Zainab said evenly, this is a surprise. Can we talk, privately? Kemi's voice was small, humble. Against her better judgment, Zainab nodded. They went to her office, and Zainab closed the door. What do you want? Zainab asked, remaining standing. To apologize, Kemi said. I know it doesn't mean anything. I know I can't undo what I did, but I need to say it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for pursuing your husband. I'm sorry for mocking you. I'm sorry for laughing when he threw you out. I was cruel and selfish and wrong. Zainab studied her. Why now? Because he's in prison and can't support you anymore. Because I saw myself clearly for the first time, Kemi replied. When Rashid threw me away the moment things got bad, exactly like he did to you, I finally understood. I wasn't special. I wasn't his upgrade. I was just another person he used and discarded. She looked down at her hands. I lost everything too. My reputation, my friends, my family's respect. Everyone knows me as the woman who helped destroy a marriage. No decent man will touch me. Companies won't hire me. I'm paying for what I did, and I deserve it. Yes, you do, Zainab agreed without sympathy. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Kemi continued. I just wanted you to know that I see now what you are. You're not weak or traditional or any of the things Rashid and I said. You're strong, principled, smart enough to plan 3 years ahead while we were busy being arrogant. You're everything I'm not, and I wish I'd understood that before I helped ruin your marriage. Zainab was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Kemi, I don't forgive you, not yet, maybe not ever. What you did was unforgivable, but I appreciate you saying this. And I hope you learn from it. I hope you become a better person. I'm trying, Kemi said softly. That's all I can do now. After Kemi left, Zainab sat in her office, processing the encounter. 2 months ago, that woman had been laughing as Rashid threw her into the snow. Now she was broken, humbled, apologizing. Justice, Zainab reflected, had many forms. Her phone buzzed. Barrister Akaffer with an update. Rashid's trial concluded. Verdict tomorrow. Prosecution is confident. Tomorrow, the man who'd thrown her away would learn his fate. And Zainab would be there to see it. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Journalists lined the walls, cameras ready. Bellotech's defrauded investors filled the gallery, their faces etched with hope for justice. Security personnel stood at every exit, ensuring order in what had become Nigeria's most high-profile white-collar crime trial in decades. Zainab sat in the front row, 9 months and 2 weeks pregnant, her due date already passed. Her doctor had advised against attending the verdict hearing, but Zainab had insisted. She needed to see this through. She needed to witness the end of the man who'd tried to destroy her. Beside her sat Hadiza, the woman who'd saved her life that freezing night, now her closest friend and personal assistant at Hassan Technologies. On her other side was Barrister Akaffer, who'd guided her through everything with steady professionalism. The door at the back of the courtroom opened, and Rashid Bello was led in by prison guards. Zainab barely recognized him. The confident billionaire who'd thrown her into the snow was gone. In his place was a man who'd aged a decade in 2 months. His expensive suits were replaced by prison-issued clothing. His face was gaunt, his eyes haunted. His hands were cuffed. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the courtroom. Rashid's expression flickered, shame, anger, regret, hatred, all cycling through in seconds. Then he looked away, unable to hold her gaze. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The Honorable Justice Adebio presiding. Justice Adebio was a woman in her 60s, known throughout Nigeria's legal system for her uncompromising stance on corruption. She'd sent politicians, business moguls, and government officials to prison without hesitation. Rashid's expensive legal team had tried desperately to get the case assigned to a different judge. They'd failed. "Be seated," Justice Adebio said, her voice commanding absolute authority. She adjusted her glasses and looked at Rashid with an expression of profound disappointment. "Mr. Rashid Bello, you have been tried and convicted on 17 counts of fraud, corruption, money laundering, tax evasion, and bribery. Before I pass sentence, I want to address what this case represents." She paused, letting the silence amplify her words. "This court has heard extensive evidence of your crimes. You systematically defrauded investors of over 300 million naira. You evaded 200 million naira in taxes, money that should have funded schools, hospitals, infrastructure for the Nigerian people. You bribed government officials, corrupting the very systems meant to protect society. And you knowingly sold faulty security software to government agencies, potentially compromising national security." Rashid stood motionless, his head bowed. "But beyond the financial crimes," Justice Adebio continued, her voice hardening, "this court has also heard testimony about your character. We heard how you threw your pregnant wife into freezing snow after divorcing her because she wasn't modern enough for your new lifestyle. We heard how you offered her an insulting settlement of 50,000 naira, less than the cost of your watch, to support your unborn child. We heard about employees you exploited, people you betrayed, and the complete absence of remorse you showed until consequences arrived." She looked directly at him. "Mr. Bello, you are a cautionary tale. You had intelligence, opportunity, and potential. You could have built something genuinely great. Instead, you chose shortcuts, lies, and cruelty. You hurt countless people, investors who trusted you, employees who depended on you, government officials you corrupted, and most personally, the woman who loved and supported you when you had nothing." Justice Adebio picked up her gavel. "The law provides minimum and maximum sentences for your crimes. Given the severity, the systematic nature of your offenses, and your complete lack of remorse, this court sentences you to the maximum penalty. 25 years imprisonment without possibility of parole for the first 15 years. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Rashid's knees buckled, and guards had to support him. Additionally, Justice Adebio continued, all assets obtained through illegal means are hereby forfeited to the state. These will be liquidated to compensate your victims. You are permanently barred from holding any corporate office in Nigeria, and you will pay restitution to all defrauded parties in amounts to be determined by this court. She banged the gavel. 25 years, that is the price of your greed and cruelty. May it serve as a lesson to others who think wealth places them above the law. Court is adjourned. The courtroom erupted. Investors wept with relief. Journalists rushed to file their stories. Rashid's legal team sat in stunned silence. They'd hoped for 10 years at most. Rashid himself stood frozen, the reality crushing him. 25 years. He was 32 years old. He'd be 57 when he got out if he survived prison that long. His youth, his freedom, his entire life, gone. As guards moved to escort him away, Rashid turned to look at Zainab one final time. She met his gaze steadily, her hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly. "I'm sorry," Rashid mouthed silently. Zainab said nothing. She simply watched as guards led him away, his cuffed hands hanging at his sides, his empire reduced to ashes, his future measured in prison walls. Outside the courthouse, Zainab faced a wall of journalists and cameras. "Ms. Hassan, how do you feel about the verdict? Do you think justice was served? What message do you have for other women facing similar betrayals?" Zainab raised her hand for quiet. The crowd settled, eager to hear from the woman who'd brought down a billionaire. "Justice was served today," Zainab began, her voice clear and strong. "Not just for me, but for every investor Rashid defrauded, every employee he exploited, every person he hurt through his corruption. This verdict sends a message. No one is above the law. Wealth doesn't buy immunity from consequences." She paused, gathering her thoughts. 2 months ago, Rashid threw me into freezing snow while I was 7 months pregnant with his child. He did this because I wasn't modern enough, because my values, honesty, integrity, faith, embarrassed him. He thought I was worthless, disposable, nothing. Her voice strengthened. But I was never nothing. I was the accountant who managed his books and saw every crime he committed. I was the wife who documented everything, knowing someday I might need to protect myself and others from him. I was the woman who survived his cruelty and chose to fight back not with violence, but with truth. "What's next for you?" a journalist called out. "I rebuild," Zainab replied. "Hassan Technologies is already operational. We've rehired 50 former Bellotech employees, with more joining every week. We're fulfilling legitimate contracts, operating transparently, and proving you can succeed in business without corruption. We're also establishing a foundation to support women in tech and entrepreneurship, especially those escaping abusive situations." Another journalist spoke up. "Do you have any message for Rashid Bello?" Zainab considered the question carefully. "I hope he uses these 25 years to become a better person. I hope he learns the lessons he refused to learn in freedom. I hope he finds genuine remorse for the people he hurt. But mostly, I hope his story prevents others from making the same mistakes. Shortcuts lead to dead ends. Cruelty creates enemies. And the people you dismiss as worthless today might be the ones who determine your tomorrow." "And the baby, your daughter." Zainab smiled, genuinely smiled for the first time all day. "She'll be born free from her father's corruption. She'll grow up knowing her mother fought for justice and won. She'll learn that integrity matters more than wealth, that character defines you more than status, and that women are never as weak as cruel men assume." As if on cue, Zainab felt a strong contraction ripple through her abdomen. She gasped slightly, her hand flying to her belly. Hadiza immediately noticed. "Zainab, are you?" "I think the baby decided this was the perfect moment," Zainab said with a strained laugh as another contraction hit. "We need to get to the hospital, now." The crowd erupted in excitement as Hadiza and Barrister Akhafer helped Zainab to the waiting car. Journalists captured every moment. The woman who'd brought down a corrupt billionaire now rushing to deliver the child he'd abandoned. At the hospital 14 hours later, Zainab gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She was perfect, dark curls, bright eyes that held curiosity and strength, a powerful cry that announced her arrival to the world. "What will you name her?" the nurse asked as Zainab held her daughter for the first time. Zainab looked down at the tiny life in her arms. The child Rashid had called a mistake. The baby he'd been willing to let die in the snow. The daughter he'd never know. "Amina," Zainab said softly. "It means trustworthy, faithful, everything her father wasn't, everything I'll teach her to be." As Amina nursed peacefully, Zainab reflected on everything that had happened. 3 months ago, she'd been locked out in freezing snow, pregnant and desperate, discarded by a man who'd vowed to love her forever. Today, she was CEO of a growing company, mother to a beautiful daughter, and the woman who'd exposed one of Nigeria's biggest corruption scandals. The journey from victim to victor hadn't been easy. There had been nights of doubt, moments of fear, times when giving up seemed easier than fighting. But she'd persevered, driven by a combination of survival instinct, maternal protection, and righteous anger. Her phone buzzed with messages: congratulations on the verdict, well wishes for the baby, interview requests from international media. But one message stood out, from Mr. Okonkwo at Tech Venture Capital. "Congratulations on your daughter. Also wanted you to know, Hassan Technologies' first quarter results exceeded projections by 40%. Your leadership is already showing results. The investors are thrilled. You're not just rebuilding Rashid's company, you're creating something better. Well done." Zainab smiled. Better, that was the goal. Better leadership, better ethics, better outcomes for employees, clients, and investors. 6 months later, Zainab stood on a stage at the African Women in Business Awards ceremony, holding a trophy for Entrepreneur of the Year, while Amina, now a happy, healthy 6-month-old, was being watched backstage by Hadiza. "When I started this journey," Zainab told the audience of accomplished women, "I didn't set out to be an inspiration. I just wanted justice for myself and the people my ex-husband had hurt. But along the way, I learned something important. Our darkest moments can become our greatest opportunities for transformation." She looked out at the crowd. "Many of you know my story. My husband threw me away when I was 7 months pregnant. He locked me out in freezing snow and told me I was worthless. He thought that was the end of my story, but it was actually the beginning. I took the evidence I'd been gathering for years and exposed his corruption. I watched him go to prison for 25 years. Then I took the company he'd corrupted and rebuilt it on a foundation of integrity. Today, Hassan Technologies employs over 200 people, generates 50 million naira in quarterly revenue, and operates with complete transparency. We've proven that ethical business isn't just possible, it's profitable." The audience applauded enthusiastically. "But the greatest revenge," Zainab continued, "wasn't his imprisonment or my business success. It was becoming the woman he never believed I could be. It was raising my daughter to understand that her worth isn't determined by any man's opinion. It was turning pain into purpose and betrayal into breakthrough." She raised her trophy. "To every woman who's been told she's not enough, you are enough. To every woman facing betrayal, you will survive this. To every woman rebuilding from ruins, your comeback will be greater than your setback. And to every cruel man who underestimates us, we're watching, we're documenting, and when you fall, we'll be there, not to catch you, but to build something better from what you destroyed." The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. That night, back in her modest but comfortable apartment, she'd deliberately chosen not to live ostentatiously, remembering how wealth had corrupted Rashid. Zainab sat with baby Amina, looking at the award on her shelf. Her phone rang, unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Zainab," Rashid's voice, calling from prison. He was allowed limited phone privileges, apparently. "I saw the news, the award, the company's success. I wanted to." "Don't," Zainab interrupted. "Don't apologize again. Don't ask for forgiveness. Don't try to be part of our lives. You made your choices, Rashid. You chose greed over integrity, chemi over family, corruption over honest work. Now you're living with those consequences." "I just wanted to know if Amina." "Amina is perfect," Zainab said firmly. She's healthy, happy, and thriving. She has a mother who loves her, a community that supports her, and a future full of possibilities. She doesn't need a father who's in prison for corruption. She doesn't need your influence or your values. She's better off without you. That's cruel, Rashid whispered. No, Zainab replied. Cruel was throwing me into the snow. Cruel was abandoning your pregnant wife. Cruel was building an empire on lies and exploitation. This is protective. I'm protecting my daughter from learning that your behavior was acceptable. I'm protecting her from thinking she needs a father who would choose mistresses over family. She paused. You have 25 years, Rashid. Use them to become someone worth knowing. Maybe when you're released and Amina is an adult, if you've genuinely changed, she might choose to meet you. But that's her decision, not yours. For now, you're not part of our story except as a lesson in what not to become. I loved you, Rashid said, his voice breaking. You loved what I could do for you, Zainab corrected. If you'd loved me, you wouldn't have destroyed us. Goodbye, Rashid, don't call again. She hung up and blocked the number. Looking down at Amina sleeping peacefully in her arms, Zainab felt a sense of closure she hadn't expected. The anger that had fueled her for months was finally fading, replaced by something better: purpose, peace, and pride. She'd survived betrayal and transformed it into triumph. She'd turned evidence into justice and ruins into rebuilding. She'd proven that integrity wasn't weakness, that patience was power, and that the woman dismissed as nothing could become everything. Rashid had thought throwing her into the snow would be the end of her story. Instead, it had been her awakening. And now, holding her daughter and running a successful company built on the ashes of her ex-husband's corruption, Zainab understood the truest form of revenge. Living well, succeeding honestly, and raising the next generation to be everything their father wasn't. Justice had been served, redemption had been earned, and the future stretched ahead, bright with possibility. For Zainab Hassan, the woman who'd been locked out in the snow, the warmth of victory had never felt sweeter. What an incredible ending. Rashid got 25 years and Zainab built an empire from his ashes. This is how real revenge works, not with violence but with justice and success. What did you think of this story? Was the ending satisfying? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story inspired you, smash that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to Stories by Ajibs for more powerful revenge and justice stories. Hit that notification bell. Share this video with everyone who needs to see that karma is real. What story should we tell next? Comment your suggestions. Thank you for watching, and remember, never underestimate someone you've wronged. They might be documenting everything.